And now it's time for Guerilla Roundup. They'll let you know what happened overnight when things transpire whilst you sleep. Right there in the loop you keep.
Well, welcome to Guerilla Roundup for the third T20 International in the Women's Ashes series. I'm very happy that Toby Reynolds has managed to maintain his happiness, notwithstanding a fairly miserable cricket result for him. I think he's actually enjoying Australia despite himself. Just to give you a summary, Australia made 162 for five in their 20 overs. In reply, England were all out for 90 in 17.3 overs. So, Toby, the minute misery continues, tell us what it was like for you today.
Yeah, it was a pretty tricky game to watch. I think at the halfway stage, I was slightly optimistic. I was thinking, there's a possibility here. Australia have left a few runs out on the field. They didn't really go big at the back end of the innings. Beth Mooney talked about that after the game, saying, that they were a little bit disappointed in themselves. So I think there was perhaps a slight bit of optimism from me, probably naive optimism in the end. And then tongue in cheek, I remember saying to a colleague next to me, watch this, England will be 4 down in 4 overs. And I was almost right. They were 3 down in 4 overs. And it just collapsed from there. They were 90 all out in the end. It looked like they were going to break their lowest ever total, which I think is 87. So for a long, long time, I was thinking that there might be a new lowest total. But in the end, they managed to survive that by the barest of margins in in a slightly worse way to coin that term, or to steal that term even. And yeah, 90 all out was pretty poor, and I'm not sure they'll be happy with it. I'm not sure the England fans will be happy with it, and I think that in itself perhaps doesn't necessarily sum up this tour, but it's definitely a culmination of everything that's gone wrong this tour.
Well, if we go back to the Australian innings, I think there is someone who does sum up this tour for Australia, and it's for Australia, and it's Beth Mooney. Uh, she made what 94 not out. That's an extraordinary innings for her to do that yet again to England.
Yeah, phenomenal. She's now scored almost double the number of runs than the next highest batter in the series. I think Heather Knight's got 174. She scored over 300. And she's just been phenomenal in, both formats. The knock today, probably her best one yet.
Yeah.
She was almost made it to 100. You could hear the crowd kind of shuffle to the edge of their seats as she did it in the final over. I think she needed 12 from the final 3 balls. Couldn't quite manage it in the end, but yeah, brilliant knock. And she ran 54 of her 53. She ran 54 runs of that 90 from 53 balls that she didn't score boundaries off.
That's
So
remarkable in T20 cricket, and
yeah,
making runs where they didn't exist almost in that running, it seemed to me.
completely. Yeah, just finding gaps and turning dots into ones into twos. Just kind of the basics is how you like every teenager, every young boy, young girl to go back to, and just simple running between the wickets, no real risk at all. I think maybe she had 1 or 2 shots slightly in the air, slightly near players, but nothing crazy when you compare it to the other 21 players on the pitch who when they had their time to bat just seemed to be throwing everything at it and throwing everything away.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because she's not a player that you note for hitting a lot of sixes and fours, and yet she had the highest strike rate of anybody on the day. And it's just highly intelligent cricket. And my God, England could use some of that right now.
Yes, I think that's again another big difference there, and you could see it's been happening all tour. This England side have been looking to try and be perhaps too aggressive, and they've been wanting to be too positive and trying to entertain is what they've always been talking about, and they have been entertaining, but more so for the Australian fans and perhaps the neutral fans than the England ones, unfortunately. And yeah, they've just been trying to be too expansive in a lot of ways. You could see when you compare the ways that most of those England players got out, they're all trying to go over the top. They were trying to force balls for boundaries when they weren't there to be a hit. I mean, look at Amy Jones, for example, looking to scoop her second ball out LBW, very silly. Freya Kemp looked to try and smash one over the covers when England was already 5 down for barely anything. Nuts of a run, to be fair. He got an absolute peach from Sutherland, absolute textbook, angled in, nipped away, top of off. Perfect that was. You can't really fault over that. Similarly, Capsey, a bit unlucky, just feathered one down the leg side when sweeping. But Dunkley looked to go over the top. White Hodge looked to go over the top. Alice Heather Knight, stumped in the end, right at the back end, and Sophie Eccleston looked to go over the top. Charlie Dean looked to go over the top. Every single one of them, basically, they're in for 3, 4, 5 balls and already looking to try and counter attack when it wasn't there. That wasn't the option, particularly on what was a tricky pitch, and that was shown by Beth Mooney. We've already said it, but the fact that she ran so many was because she wasn't flying at the beginning. She kind of almost earned the right to be a little bit more expansive, and by that time she was already flying.
Yeah, it was really interesting because it certainly wasn't the pitch they were expecting, and they really had to work for their runs. And it's noticeable that the highest score apart from Beth Mooney for the Australians was Georgia Voll, who made 23, and she was struggling as well, even in that 23 at times, wasn't she?
Yeah. Similarly, she was about run the ball 23 from 21, only 2 boundaries from it. I think she just kind of worked out that the easiest thing to do for her was to get Beth Mooney on strike, and that worked really, really well. And then again, I think England had just about stemmed the flow of runs. I think they'd gone I think 4 overs, 5 overs out of boundary, and then Georgia Voll obviously wanting to try and re-spark that Australian innings, look to go over the top as well. Same with all the England players. The second they looked to try and go over the top and play a bit more expansively, they fell, and that was a big difference there. With Beth Mooney, didn't really take any risks unless the ball was short and wide. She smashed it through point, or there were a couple of times she helped to fuel on her way around the leg side. She very rarely looked to go straight down the ground or looked to go aerially. She just kept the ball down on the floor, played really safe and was rapid. 149 strike rate. You already mentioned that was the highest of the Aussies. That was highest in the whole innings as well, the whole match as well.
Yeah, it's extraordinary. So England in the field, I don't think they dropped to sway the catches, but they just continued to not be very good at it. Is that a fair way of putting it?
A fraction better, maybe, in this game than their average, you'd say. But yeah, just when you compare them to the Australians, it looks a little bit like village cricket versus first team cricket. It was pretty stark, the difference there. At one point, I think Charlie Dean perhaps went diving forward for a catch, but was a little bit stuck in 2 minds.
Yeah,
and I think maybe the confidence has gone a little bit. At their peak, these England players would be throwing themselves around. There'd be no doubt in their mind that they're going to take this catch. And I think the fact that it's just kind of spiraled out of control has perhaps played on them a little bit, and they're just stuck in 2 minds, which means it's even more likely they're going to make these mistakes, which means they're going to get stuck in 2 minds more often. It's just going to keep going and going and going. And just really have a negative impact on this team. I think obviously they've only got 1 game left, the test match, which will be in itself a really, really mental challenge. 4 days, it could be, could spend 3 of them out in the field if you're bowled out cheaply, particularly if you're bowled out cheaply twice, which this England side perhaps likely to. So it'll be a slightly different challenge, but I think once this tour is over, there's going to have to be a little bit of a reset. Whether that's with coach, with captain, changes there, but I think something's got to change really, just to try and re-spark a few things. There's talk, John Lewis.
Were you at John Lewis's press conference yesterday?
Yeah, I was there today. He had one yesterday as well, and he did throw Heather Knight a little bit under the bus.
And I just thought it was bizarre that basically he was saying, oh, well, Australia's got a natural advantage because of their climate and their lifestyle. They're all going to be much fitter than us, and sort of misses the point.
Which is why the Australian men's team have won loads of Ashes series in England in the last few years.
It's
obviously
just
they're dominant over here, but
it's crazy stuff. Yeah, and it's also missing the fundamental point. It seems to me that just technique is lacking. It's not just about fitness. It's the fielding techniques just aren't in place. It's like their heads aren't engaged a lot of the time.
Yeah, I think the fitness thing is probably been focused on too much now. Really, England players might not be as fit, but that's not the real difference. I think it is athleticism, and John Lewis actually admitted to that in the press conference yesterday. He had some slightly long-winded fairly ridiculous quotes saying, Australia are more athletic than us, they're faster than us, they're all of these things, but they're not fitter than us. And it's kind of the thing where if you're admitting to all of these things, you realize all of these things, that's actually where the big difference is, even if it's not fitness. I think that's now just been focused on so much after, Alex Hartley's comments where it all sort of kick-started after the World Cup.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think that's perhaps been taken a little bit out of control now.
Yeah.
But there is a vast gap between these two teams in a few perhaps minor areas, but these minor areas are really stacking up at the moment to 12-0 it is now.
Yeah, absolutely. As far as England's innings concerned, really, Danny White-Hodge showed some promise, but fell early. Heather Knight is again really the only person who showed any smidgen of possibility in her batting today.
Yeah. By the time she had really gotten going, she was batting with Sophie Ecclestone for the majority. I think they put on the largest partnership between them of about 29, 30. And so by the time, Heather Knight's, expecting to try and, rally this chase up together, it's sort of already fallen apart and they're 100 behind in the game and, 7 down, 8 down. It's never going to be the platform that she needs. And, maybe that's one where you could look to slide her up the order. I would be against seeing Heather Knight at number 3, perhaps. Or maybe number 4, that's a run number 3, but this England team seems to quite like having a sort of, a reserve opener almost at that number 3 slot and give them a little bit of kind of just freedom to go and swing, which has paid off a little bit. You saw with Dunkley in the first 2, she looked really, really good. She obviously slid up to open in this match and out pretty early. Look, this was the 5th out of 6 times that England's opening partnership in the series has been under 15. 4 of them have been under 10. They've been single digits. It's been pretty poor. I think that kind of sums it up. They maybe looked to be too aggressive too early, particularly in those ODIs where all 3 of them they're out for under 15. Again, you don't need to go stupidly hard from the outset. You've got a 10 over power play in ODI cricket, and even once the power play is done, there's still only 4 fielders out. So it's not like you need to worry massively about racing off to an unbelievable start. And this Australian team just know how to build these innings in both formats, and I'm sure perhaps in the test it could be similar. They're just
somebody on our WhatsApp group was saying that Beth Mooney is a bit like Joe Root in that you don't realize what's going on, and suddenly she's on 30 and she hasn't done anything. And
no, completely.
Yeah,
and that's how the best players all play.
Yes,
it's not just Joe Root. Virat Kohli in his prime was the same. Steve Smith a little less so because he slightly got bogged down, but he wasn't far off when he was really in his prime and really going. Kane Williamson, exactly the same. You go back to players 20, 30 years ago, it's probably pretty similar as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So did they sacrifice anyone to the media today?
No, just Sean Lewis again. I think it would have been harsh if it was anyone other than him or Heather.
Right. And did he have anything new to say, or is just rehashing the same stuff?
Similarly rehashing. I think, it's been 6 games in a row now that someone's had to face up to the media, and pretty much every time it's kind of the same look, and there's not really much else they can talk about. It's not like that every game there's been a different issue. It's been, the fielding, it's been the bowling's not been accurate enough. It's been the batting that they've, collapsed too much. And he did, hold them accountable today, which is, I guess, good to see. He's kind of gone away from sort of maybe trying to take the brunt of the front of force himself, and there has kind of realised that there are issues, or at least outwardly now as saying that there are issues. He talked a little bit about the test coming up as well. I asked him about that, and he was sort of discussing that consistency is going to be the key. And, over the long periods of time that this test will be played, whichever team is more consistent will win. And I think that's obviously pretty simple, but he also called for the fact that none of these girls have played any red ball cricket really, or it's the pink ball as well, but they don't play any red ball cricket whatsoever. They played a test match, just before Christmas, and that's about it really. There's not much that either team can really look back upon other than maybe a little bit of training, and even that 99% of their training will be in the white ball format, because that's what they play 99% of the time. So I think that's perhaps one thing to take out, is that he would definitely like to see some more domestic stuff. And I think I would as well. It'd be really
absolutely,
maybe like a north versus south, or a little 4-team, 3-team kind of Lions, England A kind of, regional kind of fixture, mini tournament, kind of round robin thing of some sort, just so that you have, that the best 22, the best 33 players will have played some form of long format cricket, which they never do. I mean, some of these girls will be making their test debut, you'd think, perhaps in the coming days. And if not, then by the time of the next test match, there's likely going to be at least a good few new faces in test cricket. And you already saw someone like Maya Busha made her test debut just before Christmas against South Africa, scored 100. So, that's not necessarily a fluke, but it's gonna happen from time to time that someone comes in. Alice Davison-Richards did exactly the same thing. 100 on debut 2022, I think it would have been. And then she's not played a test match since. She's not really got a since.
And for the bowlers, it's a workload thing in terms of, bowling a hell of a lot more than 4 or 10 overs in a day.
It's going to be big, and that's the big issue as well. This England seam attack and bowling attack is perhaps a fraction light. We're not sure what Kate Cross, the condition of her is going to be. Lauren Bell didn't play today through to illness. She obviously went off the pitch at Canberra with sort of maybe vertigo or not feeling well, whatever it was. And I think it's been the same the last couple of days. Charlie Dean, we think went down with clutching her stomach, maybe a few issues there. So hopefully she recovers as well, because she could be pretty useful, I'm sure, in their long format. So by the time you kind of get through that, England could be, struggling a little bit for numbers. It'll be interesting to see how their bowling attack does line up. Eccleston will undoubtedly obviously play. You think Kate Cross, if she's fit and if Lauren Bell's fit, will take the new ball together. And then that leaves a question of, if you play someone like Charlie Dean as another spinner and use just the 3-seamers, or perhaps someone like Lauren Filer, who did play so well in the Ashes, back in 2023, that maybe she'll retain her spot in the test match. And, perhaps they might look to Freya Kemp. I think that would be unlikely, but, the possibility there, a bit more of all rounder that she'd offer. And I think that's kind of where they're at as the England side, is, are they going to play, 2 spinners, or might they try and squeeze 4 seamers in there and just play Eccleston as the sole slow bowler?
Yeah. Well, we shall see. I'm pleased to say that the forecast for the 30th and the 31st and the 1st is fine. Well, slight chance of showers, but low to mid-20s and partly cloudy. So it should be actually very pleasant playing conditions of an evening at the MCG. So what are you up to now? You've got 5 days till you have to turn up at the MCG. I take it an Englishman following cricket abroad is going to be golf and drinking between now and then, is it?
Definitely one of those. I'll leave the viewers to decide that one, which I think it might be. It's Australia Day tomorrow, so I'm heading to Melbourne. Got a 7 a.m., 8 a.m. flight, so down to Melbourne, and then I think spending a day at the beach, maybe a couple of days at the beach, and just, I think, relax a little bit. I think there'll probably be some more press conferences, some more media stuff. So head to some of those and see what we can find out for this England side ahead of what will be a pretty challenging 4 days, I'm sure.
Have you been to the MCG before?
I have. I was there in 2017-18 for the England Ashes down there. Tom Curran dismissed David Warner on 99. Me, my dad, my brother stand up cheering. All the Aussies around us, nothing. It's called a no ball. About a minute later, they all stand up cheering. We're kind of sat there looking a little bit, shell shocked and trying to hide, I think.
Great memories, though. I mean, such a stadium to be in for something like that. It's fantastic. I hope you really enjoy it. Well, we'll catch up with you on the 30th for the first day of the Women's Ashes Test. Until then, take care. Don't get too hungover. We expect to see you bright-eyed and bushy-tailed on the 30th.
See you in a little bit.
Okay, thanks very much, Toby. Take care.
And now it's time for Guerilla, a roundup. They'll let you know what